It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Klaper, who is joining us virtually today from the west coast of Canada, where it's just 7 in the morning. When I first reached out to inquire if Dr. Klaper could join our conference, I admit I was worried that the timing would be a deal breaker. After all, asking somebody to present at 7 in the morning their time is no small request on a weekend. But then came his response. Not to worry, I'm up way before that. I'd love to join you. Clearly, early mornings are no obstacle for Dr. Klaper's enthusiasm and dedication. For those unfamiliar, Dr. Klaper is a physician with decades of clinical experience in general practice, urgent care, and nutritional medicine. A graduate of the University of Illinois College of Medicine, which, by the way, that's my birth state. He trained in internal medicine, surgery, orthopedics, and anesthesiology at the University of British Columbia Hospitals, and obstetrics at the University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Klaper's current focus is his nonprofit, Moving Medicine Forward, which educates medical students and physicians on using diet and lifestyle to prevent and reverse chronic disease. He is a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and an advisor to the Plantrician Project and the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Michael Klaper.
What a lovely introduction, but what an honor to be able to address people who are focused on the doctors of the future. That resonates so deeply with me. That holds so much promise for health and planetary stability even. So thank you for this invitation. Let's get right to the message that I think is most important for all young doctors and old doctors to hear as well. As you heard, spent a fair amount of time as residents in various training programs. And like all of you in medical school and those who teach, we learn how to diagnose all sorts of wonderful and weird diseases from smallpox to leprosy. But when you get out in the real world, when you're in real practice and you look in the waiting room in the emergency department or your own medical clinic, no matter what specialty you go into, who's waiting there to see you, no matter what specialty you go into, from emergency medicine to general surgery to rheumatology, doesn't matter. Who's in the waiting room wanting you to help them feel better? A large group of people with a small group of diseases. They're generally going to be overweight, if not clinically obese. You're going to see rampant atherosclerotic vascular disease showing up as elevated lipids, elevated blood pressure, and actual obstructive syndromes like angina and claudication. You're going to see rampant type 2 diabetes and a host of inflammatory diseases involving every organ system from lungs to gut to joints to immune system. Welcome to medicine in the 21st century. No matter what country you're in, if you're practicing Western medicine, the people waiting to see you in general are going to be overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, atherosclerotic, and inflamed. Now, of course, not every patient's going to have every one of these qualities, but these are going to be the common, recurring, dominant chords of disease that you're going to be dealing with throughout your medical career. Now, normally, the way medicine that I was taught to practice is when you see a patient for the first time, you practice good medicine, take a history, do a physical exam, order your labs, make a diagnosis, get a diagnosis on them, get them on the right medication, refer them to the right specialist, surgical or medical, and you've done your job as a primary care physician. And as far as the cause of these diseases, professors and medical techs shrugged their shoulders, etiology unknown. And it's true, we've not teased out every last interaction between every gene and every enzyme. But to say that we do not know the cause of these diseases overlooks something very, very blatant that we all have to come to terms with. Certainly it's true in Sweden. Just to say etiology unknown and throw our hands up does not alter the fact that atherosclerotic vascular disease is the #1 cause of death in your fine country, both ischemic heart disease and cerebrovascular accidents. And Alzheimer's disease is a major contributor to mortality and morbidity, and that has a huge vascular component to it as well. Just like my home country of America, Swedish people are becoming significantly overweight or obese. It's the most one of my major 5 factors for healthy years of life being lost. And your diabetes rate is going up. It's estimated that by year 2045, you'll have over 660,000 people with type 2 diabetes as that incidence steadily climbs. So what's the cause? Why is this happening? Why is the clogged arteries and obesity increasing among the Swedish population? Many people believe it's the daily diet that most Swedes are consuming in one form or another. And I had a real insight into the role of diet and disease when I spent 8 years as an attending physician on the staff at TrueNorth Health Center in Santa Rosa, California, about an hour north of San Francisco. And there we had the same river of patients, overweight, hypertensive, diabetic, clogged up and inflamed. But this is an inpatient facility. People came to stay for 2, 3, 4 weeks or longer. And at this clinic, we did not raise the dosage of their beta blockers and insulin. Instead, we fed these folks a diet of whole plant foods. Every morning, there was a big pot of fresh steel-cut oats or oat groats with lots of fruits and sunflower seeds and slivered almonds to put on it, lots of plant milks, oat milk, rice milk, hemp milk. This was every breakfast. Every lunch, every dinner had big, colorful salads, hearty vegetable soups, big plates of steamed green and yellow vegetables, and a host of filling entrees, no cheese burritos, no oil stir fries, curries and chilies and lasagnas and a host of ethnic cuisine dishes and lots of colorful food for dessert. This was the food stream that disappeared down these people's gullets meal after meal, day after day, week after week. And the changes we saw in these people were nothing short of spectacular. And within days, the obesity begins to melt away as the magnesium, potassium works its way into the walls of the arteries relax and dilate, high blood pressures come down. It's an anti-inflammatory diet, so our joints certainly begin to ameliorate. Carl came in not only 80 pounds overweight, but with rampant inflammatory joint disease. We not only fed these folks, we gave them cooking lessons every day. We didn't want them just to eat healthy while they were at TrueNorth. We wanted them to go home and continue this pattern of whole plant food predominant eating. And Carl did that, and 18 months later sent us this picture. He obviously spent some time in the gym, but not only did the obesity melt away, but he was free of joint pain and off his anti-inflammatory medications. With all the lovely fiber in the fruits and vegetables and resistant starches in the beans, these folks have their first good bowel movement in years. It improves their outlook on the whole universe. As inflammation subsides, the asthmatic folks noted they stopped using their albuterol inhalers so much. This was definitely the case with Eli. Came in looking like this and using his albuterol inhaler every 6 hours. After 14 months on a plant-based diet, turned into this Eli and stopped using his bronchodilator inhaler. The sleep became more restful. We were able to reduce these people's medications. Emily came in looking like this, 60 pounds overweight on 30 units of insulin and 2 medications for hypertension. Learned how to eat a whole food plant-based diet. 11 months later, she not only lost the weight, but lost the diabetes and the hypertension. She's off all her medications. You sometimes on the TV commercials for weight loss programs, you see the little line on the bottom saying these results are not typical. Well, these results are typical. This is what we see on a diet of whole plant foods. the phenomenon of disease reversal. This is not a California woo-woo concept. We are talking about remission of clinical symptoms, the joints stop hurting, the lungs stop wheezing, and the lab results normalize. The inflammatory markers come down, the lipid panels normalize. This is what we see predictably. It's a remarkable, it's the most amazing transformation in all of medicine, and we deserve to learn more about it. And as I became a student of the effect of plant-based nutrition upon these chronic degenerative diseases, I found these 9 diseases that most of us primary care docs are going to spend the majority of our careers wrestling with. All of these respond beautifully. They either will be arrested or actually reversed on a diet of whole plant foods, plus other lifestyle pillars. You have to take a walk every day, you need enough sleep, reduce stress, etc. But it's the food, it's the food stream going through the tissues meal after meal that really makes the difference. So why does this happen? How does this transformation happen? I owe you folks an explanation of what it is we are looking at here. And all I can say at this point, after 50 years in primary care practice, I wish when I was a medical resident, some attending physician, some chief resident sat me down and said, look, in a minute you're going out to outpatient clinic and you're going to see this steady stream of patients, overweight, hypertensive, diabetic, clogged up and inflamed, and they want you to do something for them, doctor, to help them restore their health. Why are they sitting in these bodies in front of you with all these medical issues? Let's get real about the effects of their daily diet upon their body. And the upshot to share with you is that when one eats a meal of whole plant foods, like this one, and a nice salad and vegetable soup and steamed green and yellow veggies, and here's some sweet potatoes, no oil stir fry, you eat a meal like this. And if an hour later I were to sneak up on you with a needle and a syringe in my hand, and when you weren't looking, I draw 5 cc's of blood into a glass red top tube, let the blood clot, put it in the centrifuge, spin it down, and then take the blood tube out and look at it, what we would see, of course, is the red clot goes to the bottom, and the liquid part of the serum is crystal clear. You can read newsprint through normal serum. This is what your blood should look like after you eat a healthy, low-fat, plant-based meal. But you eat a standard Swedish meal these days, and not all your patients are going to be eating this kind of food, but this is very commonly consumed in your country there. And after an hour after eating one of these meals, now we draw that same 5 cc's of blood and spin it down in the centrifuge. This is what we would see. This cloudy appearance here, this is lipemic serum. This is fat in the blood. Postprandial, of course, after eating. This is fat in the blood after eating. It's mostly triglycerides and saturated fats with some cholesterol in it. It's largely the fat of the animals this person just ate. Not everybody shows the fat this optically densely, but everybody has a wave of fat that goes to the bloodstream after you eat a fatty meal. How can you not? Where's it going to go? And your blood stays this lipemic for a good 5 solid hours. And during those 5 hours, evil things are happening in the circulation. The atherogenic LDL particles are increasing. The blood is more viscous; it's thicker. The saturated fat makes the plasma thicker, and the fat coats the red cells. They start sticking together. Well, it takes a higher pressure to force viscous blood through capillary beds. So blood pressure goes up. The fat in the blood sticks in the abdominal fat stores, increasing not only obesity, but also insulin resistance and blood sugars. I'll show you that in a minute. And the saturated fats are pro-inflammatory, so it fans inflammatory reactions throughout the body. This is what happens for a good 5 solid hours after eating a standard meat and dairy-based meal. And the reality is, in your affluent country like mine, most people are keeping their blood fatty all day. The stuff never really clears out of the bloodstream. Well, you keep your blood fatty for 20, 30, 40 years, and you can't be shocked when some adverse changes start showing up. And by the way, it turns out that your country leads the world in the percent of daily intake from ultra-processed foods. Over 40% of your food comes from these ultra-processed foods. Now, the problem is I focused on the fat because it's the most visibly obvious, but there's more than fat in that blood. When you eat a meal like I just showed you of this ilk, all full of meats and dairies and processed foods, what floods through the circulation, through every cell in the body, is what I call the postprandial red tide. And we're going to go through quickly this list of molecular marauders that create so much havoc throughout the body on a cellular and physiologic level. Now, it's a high sodium diet from the sodium, salt in the meat, salt in the cheese, salt in the chips and processed food. Not only raises blood pressure, but opens the door to lupus and autoimmune diseases. The sugars glycosylate proteins, and the proteins start sticking together. They cross-link. They become stiff and fracture the collagen proteins in your structural tissues. The saturated fat, as I mentioned, fans inflammatory reactions and raises atherogenic LDLs. The fried foods create free radicals that rip electrons off your DNA and off your cell membranes. And they're cooking both meat and carbohydrates, chips, as well as chicken, creates advanced glycation end products that teem with free radicals and rip electrons off your DNA and off your cell membranes. The emulsifiers that give the ice cream its nice mouthfeel and keeps the candy bar soft also dissolves the intestinal mucus lining your gut that makes the gut permeability increase. And oxidized cholesterol is a real issue when it comes to damaging the artery walls. We'll get to that in a minute, but I just want to stop here and saying all the salt and sugar and oils and processing chemicals, you can find these all in vegan junk foods. And just because one's eating vegan doesn't mean you're eating healthy. And that's why we talk about whole food, plant-based. We want these foods to be like you could recognize them growing in the garden, cucumbers and tomatoes, etc. Not this kind of stuff that creates so much molecular chaos. But most of your patients are not going to be vegan, and they are eating a piece of animal muscle 2-3 times a day, and that adds an entire new layer of molecular chaos to your tissues after every such meal. I'll quickly go through this list here. The oxidized, very active cooking meat, frying the chicken, grilling the burger, broiling the steak oxidizes the cholesterol in the animal muscle, and as the oxidized cholesterol particles are the most atherogenic, leading to heart attacks and strokes. When you broil the steak or fry the chicken, you are oxidizing the glycogen and nucleic acids in the animal muscle. That's going to create reactive aldehydes that are mutagenic. They damage your genes. You're just having lunch. You don't want to damage your DNA, but that's what happens when you eat cooked meat products. But steaming broccoli does not create reactive aldehydes. Boiling rice does not create these mutagenic aldehydes here. So again, another plea for a whole food plant-based diet. New 5-GC is a sialic acid that only animals make. It drives inflammatory reactions throughout the body, and our paleo patients and our keto friends are giving themselves a shot of new 5-GC 3 times a day. Endotoxin comes from the slaughterhouse bacteria, and that makes the gut leaky, that depresses myocardium, makes your blood clot, and it's heat stable. Grilling the burger does not get rid of the endotoxin from the slaughterhouse. Trimethylamine oxide from the carnitine in meat and the choline in eggs drives cholesterol into the artery walls, increasing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Broiling the steak, grilling the burger inevitably creates cancer-causing amines that smear on the stomach wall, giving gastric cancers, the colon wall, giving GI cancers. When you eat meat and all the amino acids flood up into the liver, the liver responds with a surge of insulin-like growth factor 1, excuse me, one of the most potent growth-promoting hormones in the body. And if you're a woman with an early breast cancer or a guy with an early prostate cancer, the last thing you want is a diet that makes you walk around with high IGF-1 levels, but that's certainly what a meat-based diet does. Heme iron makes red meat red. It also increases the risk of strokes and cancers. And at least in America, the animals in the feedlots are fed grains that are sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. They're given hormones and antibiotics for growth promoting. I don't know if that's happening in Sweden, but it's an issue certainly with meat from the U.S. And now, due to all the microplastics out in the oceans there, the fish are taking up the microplastics. So if you're eating fish, you're going to be getting microplastics into your body that we can't get rid of. But also, half of the world's fish catch is ground up and added to animal feed. So it's fed to chickens and pigs and cows. And that winds up in the tissues of the people who eat those chickens and fish and pigs and cows. And it's substantial. Up to 5 grams of microplastic are consumed by meat and dairy and water drinkers every week. Now, that's the weight of a credit card that people are consuming in microplastics every week. And if you eat 3 meals a day, that's over 1,000 times a year. You're flooding the red tide through your tissues. And we know now that within minutes of eating anything, molecules of that food are flowing through every cell in our body, where your DNA lies unfolded and your genes lie exposed. And the food molecules wash over your DNA and they play your DNA like a piano. And they turn genes on, they turn genes off. They induce enzymes, they shut enzymes down. Every meal brings in not only nutrients, it brings in information. Every meal changes us on a genetic molecular level. And you don't need to be a geneticist to understand that the genes are going to be turned by this piece of broiled animal muscle, genes that we know drive aging and inflammation and autoimmune disease and cancer initiation. Those genes from this broiled steak are going to be a totally different set of genes than those that are going to be turned on by this green cell that sends a surge of phytonutrients through the tissues that quench free radicals, that promote tissue stabilization, that promotes membrane repair. The difference between an animal-based meal and a plant-based meal, in computer analogy, is the difference between 1 and 0. It is so profound. And in a sentence, your genes may load the gun, but your diet and your lifestyle pull the trigger. In other words, you may have a genetic propensity towards a given disease, but whether that disease actually manifests in your body, your patient's body, your loved one's body, largely, not completely, but largely depends on the food you are flowing through those tissues every 4 hours for the past 20, 30 years. That's really what shapes us more than anything else. And here's a graphic example. The left-hand panel, this is a genetic readout of a man with early stage prostate cancer. All these red patches here, these are active oncogenes. Onco means cancer. These are cancer-promoting genes of promoting the growth of this man's prostate cancer. This man went on a diet of whole plant food, stopped the meat and the dairy and the oils and processed foods, and that steady stream of soups and salads and steamed veggies and curries and chilies and plant-based entrees flooded through his tissues and through his prostate meal after meal, month after month. 5 months later, they did another biopsy. Same patient, same prostate, same genes. Look at all the red active oncogenes that have now been silenced. This is epigenetics. This is such a powerful tool. How can we withhold this from our patients? Now, food is so powerful, it changes us in one of 2 ways. Either directly, the way new 5G turns on inflammation, but also the food we eat changes the microbes in our gut, and they will change us from the neurotransmitters they produce, as well as their effect upon gut wall permeability, etc. Food is powerful. We ignore it at our peril. So for those of you who are in clinical medicine or going into it, I'll ask, when you open the door in the exam room and you see the man with the angina clutching his chest from chest pain, or the woman with asthma pulling on her albuterol inhaler, or the man with the type 2 diabetes injecting insulin, or the woman grieving over her acne-scarred skin, and they say, "What's the cause of these diseases, doctor?" "Oh, etiology unknown. We don't know the cause." Really, doctor, can we deny the fact that what this person's been running through their tissues every 4 hours for the past 30 years has something to do with this man's arteries and her lungs and his insulin function and her skin? The food effects over time equal the health effects. And the good news is these are largely reversible diseases. I wish someone had told me this in medical school. I wish someone told me that hypertension and type 2 diabetes are reversible. They certainly are, as are all of these conditions. So why does it happen? What are we looking at? Here, fasten your seatbelts. Here is the explanation. Now, here we are, the person is still eating the red tide foods here, the meat and the dairy and the oils and the sugars and all the processed foods. And here's the red tide molecular marauders flooding through their cells with every meal. Finally, the person says, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I got to change something. I'm tired of being overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, with sore joints and a medicine cabinet full of pills. What do I need to do, doc? Well, get on a diet of largely whole plant foods. As soon as they do that, look what happens. The most important thing is that the red tide stops. There is respite. Every cell in your body has repair mechanisms built in. Do you know you've got DNA editing enzymes on every strand of DNA? And these are globular proteins that spend all day going up and down your DNA strands looking for mismatched nucleotides. And when they find them, they fix them. They ask your permission. They repair your DNA automatically. But these remarkable repair mechanisms cannot function optimally if every 4 hours a flood of red tide free radicals and advanced glycation end products and high fructose corn syrup and animal-based peptides and all this floods through the tissues, you're going to be foiling the repair mechanism. Now the person's done with that. They've gotten on the plant-based train, boots in, like they say in New Zealand, and look what happens. These molecular marauders are now replaced by an entirely different set of nutrients that floods through the tissues with every meal. Let's have a look. First of all, it's a high water content diet. All the soups and the salads and the steamed veggies and the fruits are full of water. And as the water is added to the bloodstream, the blood becomes less viscous. Blood viscosity goes down. That's going to allow a surge of more free-flowing blood, bringing oxygen and nutrients to all the tissues in the body. And we notice that that blood viscosity significantly is reduced when people adopt a diet free of meats and dairy products. Not only that, but all the dark green leafy vegetables the person's now eating is going to increase the production of nitric oxide in the artery walls, and that's going to produce a very subtle vasodilation, which will not only lower blood pressure as the artery walls get a little more expanded there, but very importantly, it's a very subtle dilation, but it's an important one because of a law in physics called Poiseuille's law. And Poiseuille's law says that the flow of liquid through a pipe will increase by the fourth power of the increase of the radius. And what this means, of course, is that just a small increase in the diameter of the artery is going to mean a big increase in blood flow. And you know this yourself. You're trying to suck a liquid up through a skinny straw. A straw twice as wide gives you a whole lot more liquid. That's Poiseuille's law. Well, you've got now more free-flowing blood in a dilated vessel. You get a surge of nutrients and oxygen throughout all the tissues of the body, brain, heart, kidneys, liver. When you pull the animal fat out of the diet, you're pulling out the arachidonic acid, which is the major driver of inflammation in the body. And now all the fats in the diet are coming from plant oils, many of which are in the omega-3 family that have an anti-inflammatory effect. So you've changed the entire inflammatory balance in tissues throughout the body from a pro-inflammatory to an anti-inflammatory. That is absolutely huge. Not only that, all the free radicals, reactive oxygen species here, that were in the tissues from all the sugars and fried foods, etc., that were causing oxidative damage to your tissues, ripping electrons off your proteins. Well, now all these lovely, colorful fruits and vegetables are filled with antioxidants that quench free radicals and lower the oxidative stress in tissues throughout the body, the extracellular fluid, the intracellular milieu, far less oxidative. When you change the food stream going through the gut, you're going to change the microbes that live in that gut. If you're eating meat and dairy products, you are fostering the growth of some really pathogenic microbes from the Bacteroidetes phyla. These are not friendly guys here that make your gut leaky, increase inflammation. Well, when you pull the meat and dairy out, And now all the material coming down the intestinal tract are plant fibers. They have lots of resistant starches. That fosters the growth of Prevotella microbes, far more benevolent microbes that promote tissue repair and quench free radicals, and they have an anti-cancer effect. And they also happen to produce neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin and oxytocin. These are feel-good chemicals. People often notice their mood improves when they adopt a plant-based diet. That's not a placebo effect. That's a gift from a refurbished microbiome. When you stop eating other animals' cholesterol, your own lipids are going to improve and become less atherogenic. Skin oils become less odoriferous. Guys notice their body odors improve or disappears altogether. At least in the States, they've genetically modified the dairy cow, so they're now all pregnant, and the milk is full of estrogen. I don't know if you have that in Sweden, but I suspect that you do, and that's going to increase the risk of breast lumps and prostate cancers. High protein diets are not friendly to the kidneys. When all those amino acids slam into the glomerular membranes, they cause the kidneys to go into a state of hyperfiltration that damages the glomerular membrane and gets the patient on the road to chronic kidney disease. The secretions in their lungs become less viscous on a plant-based diet, so the asthmatic folks breathe easier. And white blood cell counts go down because of less stimulation of the bone marrow, but they do not suffer more infections. These are just some of the changes that happen in tissues, in cells throughout the body. When someone asks a doctor, in a word, what changes in the body when one goes from an animal-based food stream to a plant-based food stream, what changes in the body in a word? Everything changes. It's a totally different physiology. The intracellular, the extracellular milieu, the microbiome, the blood viscosity, the oxidative potential in the tissues, the renal function, blood circulation, everything is different. And I could spend 3 lectures going through each one of these organ systems on how they each benefit from change to a plant-based diet. Don't have time for that. But can you get enough protein on a plant-based diet? Absolutely. The beans and peas and chickpeas and lentils and nuts and seeds and whole grains are full of protein. You eat 3 meals a day on whole plant foods, especially emphasizing legumes like beans and peas and lentils. It's easy to get 80 grams of high-grade protein or more, not an issue. So let's talk about reversing 2 of the most fearsome diseases you'll have to deal with as primary care doctors. First of all, atherosclerotic vascular disease. It's a reversible disease. I wish someone had told me that. Every hour in Sweden, 3 of your citizens grab their chest and falls over the heart attack and die. It's 28,000 times a year you lose a fellow Swedish citizen there. Now, I'm not going to be one of these Americans on a soapbox wagging a finger at you Swedes, because the truth is, you folks deserve a medal. You have done wonderful work in reducing your mortality rate from cardiovascular disease. They've been, for the last years, these diseases have been on a significant decline. And I really laud you for this. And it's attributable to several factors. Yes, your high-tech medicine certainly saves a lot of people. But you've really gotten public health initiatives to reduce smoking and lower cholesterol and healthier lifestyles, which is hopefully a more plant-based diet. So good for you, Swedish citizens. But that said, 28,000 of your fellow citizens dying every year is quite a burden. Those are all moms and dads and family members who people love, but they're also taxpayers that other citizens now have to shoulder the burden. Why does this happen? Is it just a matter of LDL levels? Is it statin deficiency? Plaque forms in the artery wall, tears open, sets off a clot that stops the blood flow downstream to the heart muscle. No, those two things, cooking the animal muscle, broiling the steak, grilling the burger, frying the chicken, oxidizes the animal muscles, cholesterol. So you've got oxidized cholesterol, but also the free radicals produced in the French fries and the onion rings, they rip electrons off cholesterol. The uric acid damages the endothelial lining from the meat, the fructose in the desserts, the phosphoric acid in the collagens, all the red tide damages the endothelial membranes, and the oxidized cholesterol then works its way into the walls of the arteries, taken up by the macrophages, and leads to plaque formation, which then ruptures, leading to the vascular catastrophe. Is this relentlessly progressive? Most cardiologists think so. Oh, they're all going to need statins. They're all going to need stents. They're all going to need bypasses. That's right, doctor. If you don't talk to them about what they're eating, that's what you're going to see. But it doesn't have to be this way. This is a reversible disease, as Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn has made clear in his research and his writings. I highly recommend this to everyone who is caring for patients with atherosclerotic vascular disease. What is this program? It's 100% whole food plant-based. I'll show you why that's important. Plus, he wants you to have a helping of dark green leafy vegetables a few times a day. Why does that happen? As he's published a remarkable study showing how profoundly this can stop the progression of coronary artery disease. Here we are in the wall of the artery. Here's the oxidized cholesterol coming in from the diet. And that's also oxidized in the wall of the artery on its own, is taken up by the macrophages here, producing the foam cells, which leads to plaque formation. But with Dr. Esselstyn's program, first of all, it's completely plant-based, so the red tide stops. That's the most important thing. There's respite. And now with the antioxidants always in the gut, that you're eating several times a day, they act like time-release capsules that steadily drizzle antioxidants into the bloodstream 24/7, week after week. And these antioxidants work their way into the walls of the arteries. They neutralize free radicals. The foam cells out-migrate. Many positive things happen as weight goes down, the endothelial function improves. And the plaques in the walls of the arteries get smaller and smaller and smaller as the cholesterol is resorbed and the foam cells leaves. The endothelial lining is repaired not by magic, but because the bone marrow is constantly putting out showers of stem cells that reupholster the artery walls like new paving stone. And as a result, the plaques melt away. Here's the left anterior descending artery in a man's heart. He has severe angina. The whole artery should be this wide with angiography dye. But this rat-eaten portion here, these are atherosclerotic plaques encroaching into the blood flow channel. This man has severe angina. He went on Dr. Esselstyn's program, soup after salad, after steamed veggies, after curry and chili and plant-based entrees for 29 months. The plaques melt away. This artery turns into this artery. Same patient, same artery. Look how reversible this advanced disease is. And again, if you've got, just bypassing this does not cure the patient. If you've got a plaque disease this severe in your coronary arteries, you've got it in the carotid arteries going up to your brain and the renal arteries going to your kidneys. It's a total body disease. This plaque has to be melted away totally from the entire vascular tree, and that's the role of the plant-based diet. And because those plaques start melting away and the nitric oxide production gets in the walls of the arteries, and you get this subtle dilation, Puys-Sill's law kicks in. And as a result, you see these remarkable results. Here's a myocardial perfusion scan of heart muscle. Red is good blood flow. You can see how choked down this vasculature is in this man's heart. Went on a whole food plant-based diet in just 2 weeks. The plaques melt away a little bit, but the artery walls relax and dilate a little bit. Puys-Sill's law kicks in, and this perfusion scan turns into that perfusion scan in just 2 weeks. That's how profound the changes could be, which explains this report I saw back in 1977 The 65-year-old man, severe angina, had to stop every 9 or 10 patients, went on a plant-based diet. 6 months later, he's climbing mountains in the Lake District of England. That's how quickly this disease can reverse. And we should have a real reason to offer hope to our patients, not just stents, statins, and bypasses. Arteries all over the body, as I mentioned, start to open up on a whole food plant-based diet, much to the delight of people at home. I'm sure this woman is overjoyed that his retinal arteries are now more open and that he has better vision to do the dishes with. But seriously, arteries all over the body open up. And there's going to be a growing literature documenting the importance of plant-based diet in reversing these killer diseases. Whoops, what happened there? Let me go back here. Sorry. High blood pressure, heart failure, kidney failure, they all can respond beautifully to a diet of whole plant foods. GFRs go up, creatinine levels come down. It's so exciting. Get these people off their high blood pressure medication. In fact, it forces the doctor to learn this wonderful skill called deprescribing, where you got to learn how to take the patients off these medications. What a wonderful skill to learn. Now, many cardiologists say, listen, that's very nice, doc. I don't have time for this. I've got a waiting room full of patients with angina. It's easier for me to just give them a prescription for statins and a shot of Repatha and tell them, don't bother me. Yeah, you can force this cholesterol level down with these potent drugs, but to think that you are extending their lifespan or reducing their risk of serious disease, I think is a false hope. I think you're putting these people in the same category as our paleo eating friends who eat meat 2-3 times a day. In my book, Packing Your Intestinal Tract Full of Animal Flesh 3 times a day is a recipe for colon cancer, for all the carcinogenic amines that are going to be smeared on the gut wall 2-3 times a day. All the TMAO and the oxidized cholesterol is going to give an epidemic of heart attacks and strokes. The endotoxin is going to give leaky gut, leading to lupus and autoimmune diseases. As I'll show you in a minute, the fat's going to clog up their insulin receptors, giving them type 2 diabetes. The bacteria that are going to be spawned in their gut wall is going to cause inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, and colitis. And the arteries in their brains are going to thicken and choke down blood flow and increase the risk of dementia. This is a diet of death, even though they've got, I got a cholesterol of 1.8 millimoles. Wow, I can eat all the meat I want. I think it gives them a false sense of security. We're plant-eating hominids. We need to honor this. We have the same digestive system that our gorilla relatives have. They're eating leaves and fruits and vegetation all day. We ought to follow their example. We are not the carnivorous apes. Insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, which is increasing in Sweden. People say, sugar, avoid sugar and diabetes. The problem's not the sugar, it's the fats. When people keep their blood fatty month after month, the fat works its way into the striated muscle. Here you see striated muscle. This black stuff is intramyocellular lipid. That's fat in the muscle cell, should not be there. Here it is under the electron microscope, and this is causing problems. It inhibits kinase enzymes. So when insulin engages with the insulin receptors, instead of setting off the enzymatic machinery to pull glucose into the cells, insulin knocks on the door, but nobody answers. The sugar piles up in the bloodstream. But the high sugar is the result of the fat in the diet, not the cause of the diabetes. And there's getting to be an extensive literature documenting that intramyocellular lipid is the driving force behind insulin resistance. Here, schematically, you see a muscle cell. The insulin receptors are all clogged up on the inside from the intramyocellular lipid. But if the person happens to be obese, as is increasing in Sweden, you've got another layer of insulin resistance coming from the intra-abdominal fat, which puts out a steady stream of inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-1 and interleukin-6, and they produce what's called metabolic inflammation. This is a real thing, obesity-related inflammation and insulin resistance. People say, well, you can be fat and still be healthy. Not in my book. An obese abdomen, the obesity is a state of inflammation. that's constantly pumping out these inflammatory cytokines, giving this term metabolic inflammation. So here we are back in the muscle cell. The insulin receptors are clogged up on the inside from the intramyocellular lipid, but they're also interfered with on the outside by the inflammatory cytokines. No wonder so many obese people develop type 2 diabetes. But the good news is this is reversible. I wish someone had told me this in medical school. Carbohydrates are clean burning. They don't clog up insulin receptors. And as people get on a whole food plant-based diet, the fat that's already in the muscle will be burned for energy. The inflammatory cytokines fade away. And as a result, the type 2 diabetes reverses. The folks, when you compare a plant-based diet to the Diabetes Association diet, they get better improvements in their A1C, they lose more body fat, their lipids improve more, they lose less protein from their kidneys. It really is the key to reversing type 2 diabetes, and we need to share this with our patients as well. And in this age of Ozempic, at $1,000 a month, people going through all these machinations and all the side effects, all they have to do is eat a diet of whole plant foods, because whole plant food, they're mostly fiber and water. That's what you're filling your belly up with. The calorie density is so low that if you go back for a third bowl of vegetable soup, who cares? It's just fiber and water. You're going to pee it out. It doesn't stick to you. And this is guilt-free eating. You don't know carb counting, no calorie counting. Eat, my child. Fill your belly up with the soups and the salads and the veggies, and you're going to wind up getting lean. Vegans get lean. There's no surprise here. And we should take advantage of that. It's an anti-inflammatory diet, as I mentioned. Inflammatory joint disease improves. And so does autoimmune diseases like lupus. If you've got patients or loved ones with lupus or ankylosing spondylitis, I urge you to get the book Goodbye Autoimmune Disease by Brooke Goldner. She had severe lupus, was having strokes and renal failure, and she shares how she reversed it with a whole food plant-based diet. Highly recommended. As the red tide sloshes through the intestinal tract, it is not gentle with the gut wall. It causes inflammation, and you wind up with inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, colitis. But getting these folks on a whole food plant-based diet is step one in actually reversing these diseases. You still need to use prednisone and anti-inflammatories, but the point is you can slowly taper these as the gut wall heals from the plant-based diet. You can taper off these drugs, and hopefully they won't flare with another nasty bout of Crohn's or colitis, because you've changed the microbiome, you've healed the gut wall, then you're no longer injuring it with every meal. The asthmatic folks get great improvement with their wheezing. The folks with the inflammatory skin diseases, the eczema and the psoriasis, those great improvements. Do you have to be 100% plant-based? No. And some folks may to gradually taper off their meat consumption over weeks or months. That's fine, as long as they're moving in that direction. But at least in the States here, doctors aren't taught about nutrition. It's spotty in your country, I'm told. It's not respected. It's a sissy science. I'm up in the operating room doing real medicine. But what are you doing in the operating room, doctor? You're dealing with the infections and infarctions and amputations from what your patients are eating. You're all dealing with nutrition-based diseases. And the doctors are often eating the same food themselves. So the patient diet is rarely mentioned. So it's business as usual. Well, I just have to say that business as usual in the healing professions is a losing proposition. Most importantly, the patient loses the chance to finally get rid of their disease. Every week, I get to say those blessed words to my patients. How'd you like to get rid of your type 2 diabetes? How'd you like to get rid of your hypertension? You want to get rid of your lupus? Patient, unless we deal with the patient's diet, we don't get to say those words, and the patient loses this golden opportunity to finally become a healthy person again. The doctor loses the opportunity to see their patients get healthy. I mean, why are we going into medicine if not to see our patients get healthier? The healthcare system loses billions of dollars for people to have their diseases treated so they can go right out and eat more cheeseburgers. That money could be used to fix the roads, to put internet in everybody's house, to cure poverty. There's so much better uses for that money than in the healthcare system. Excuse me. The society loses because these people still get their heart attacks and strokes. We still lose healthy, creative people as well as taxpayers. The farm animals lose 80 billion of their lives every year on this planet. And large-scale animal agriculture is the number one driving force of our environmental problems. That's why they're cutting down the forests. That's why the rivers are running dry. That's why the rivers have manure and topsoil in them. Everybody loses on just medicine not focused on the patient's diet. This is our current approach to most of these serious diseases. And at least in America, when I talk to my colleagues about nutritional counseling, they say, look, I don't even know what to tell my patients. I don't know anything about nutrition. I didn't get paid to do this counseling. I don't have time to do this counseling. The good news is you don't have to, doctor. There are now trained professionals who will do this counseling for you. I don't know the financials outline of your healthcare program there. But I do know that there are getting to be more and more plant-based dietitians and nutritionists that are willing to do this counseling for you. PAN Sweden is really promoting plant-based eating, and this is a growing movement that should be nurtured in your country because it holds the key to getting your patient really healthy. And so what I've been telling the students as I lecture is putting a new model of practice in their heads. And so when you see your patient in outpatient clinic, be a doctor, practice good medicine, take a medical history, do a physical exam, order your labs, get a diagnosis, get them on medication. But then before you just dismiss the patient, you lean across the desk and say, look, before you leave, I want you to go see Ms. Jensen in room 408. She's the Plant Strong dietitian. She's going to talk to you about what to eat. She's going to give you a handout. She's going to show you videos. She's going to take you shopping. You eat like she's telling you, and you come back and see me in a month. Let's see if you're not leaner and healthier, and we'll talk about getting you off some of these medications. And again, the dietitian doesn't have to be in your same building, in the same city. This works great by telemedicine. This is the pattern in the clinic I've started working in Victoria, British Columbia. You see the doctor, and the next stop is the plant-based dietitian. And we want people to incorporate the plant-based healing into primary care. So where do you learn about all this? Seek and you shall find. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine has wonderful courses that are available to educate yourself. Plantrician University, strongly recommended. Go to plantricianuniversity.org. They've got wonderful courses free for the taking on every aspect of plant-based nutrition through the life stages. The University of Winchester has a great 6-week online course in plant-based nutrition, highly recommended. I took it and learned a ton. Excellent books here, Plant-Based Nutrition Clinical Practice. This is a thing. There's even a journal, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and it's free. Subscribe to it. But reversing disease should be the goal of every patient and their doctor. How would you like to reverse these chronic diseases? That's what you want to do. This is the most powerful tool you will ever wield. Diuretics can make edema go away, and antibiotics can clear pneumonia. But if you want to really reverse these diseases, see the power in getting these people on a whole food, plant predominant diet. Oh, people aren't going to change what they eat. Yes, they will. The people are more than willing these days. It's not easy, and they're not always ready, but when they're ready, you can help them. There's plenty of jumpstart programs available. You come back and have a look at this slide here, but I'm sure these are American programs, but they I think would work internationally. And you get some messages every morning in your inbox with guidance and recipes, etc., and then call-ins and group counseling practices. And if you don't have much time to read, please get these 2 little books. Food is Climate by Glenn Mercer. It's 60 pages. It makes the point of how important for all our futures are to adopt a plant-based diet. And Rachel Brown, for the beginner, wrote For Fork's Sake, and she takes it to square one. Here's what you need in your kitchen. Here's how to go shopping. Here's how to make some basic meals. These 2 will get you started, and I highly recommend them. So I urge you to take the patient's diet into account, because if you don't, then you're condemning in yourself to be like the blind man and the elephant, where every doctor's got a different hold of the elephant of disease here, and the cardiologist is treating the clogged arteries, and the endocrinologist is treating the type 2 diabetes, and the gastroenterologist is treating the colitis. They think they're treating different diseases, but the truth is they're all dealing with the patient's classic meat and dairy and processed food diet and what it does to their bodies. And the good news is that you can help these people regain their health. So we're at the end. They say, once you look behind the curtain, you can't pretend you don't know what's behind the curtain. So when I give this lecture to medical schools, at this stage, I ask a provocative question. Knowing how reversible the major chronic diseases that you are going to spend the majority of your medical career treating, knowing how reversible they are on a diet of whole plant foods and healthy lifestyle practices, you want to heal these patients, or you just want to manage their chronic disease. If you're just going to manage the chronic disease, you'll leave medicine. It's a dismal way to practice medicine. They're all going to get fatter and sicker and get their strokes. You want to get them healthy, get real with what they're eating. So this has been a report from the front lines of medical care. I've been in the fray for 50 years here, and I'm reporting back to you reinforcements just coming into the battle. The most important scouting report I can give you is faced with this massive tsunami of overweight, hypertensive, diabetic, clogged up and inflamed patients. It's the food. It's been the food all along. And most importantly, most hopeful, these are reversible diseases, and a plant-predominant diet is the key to that reversal. So, last slides here. A new era in healing is open to all of us. It begins with recognizing the power of the foods on our plate. The plant-based wave is breaking. Line up your surfboard. Learn all you can from Plantrition and ACLM. And it starts with your very next whole food plant-based meal. Disease reversal should be the goal of both doctors and patients. So I'll invite you to take our feedback survey here. You can click on this if you can get to it there. And we've got a few minutes left for questions. And with that, I will stop the share and open up for questions. I hope I didn't lose everybody just now. Doctors of the future. There we are. So am I still visible, and can you still hear me? Oops. Did I?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Good. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Klaper. Very inspiring. I think to anyone who has studied medicine, is studying medicine, or wants to study medicine, those words are truly inspiring. So I wanted to open up for questions. Do we have a question already? Anybody holding? All right, I have a question. All right, let me start with one question, because you've mentioned your new initiative, your nonprofit, Moving Medicine Forward. One of the focus areas is nutrition education into medical school curricula. What do you think is the biggest barrier to achieving this, and how can healthcare professionals support this effort in their own institutions?
Oh, that is the question of the ages nowadays, of course. And we can't be naive. There are huge forces in place already that want to keep things just the way they are, and just doing Band-Aid medicine, just giving beta blockers to lower the pressure and statins to lower the cholesterol, and hope they don't have their stroke when you're on call. That's kind of the philosophy. Well, that's not good enough anymore. And without getting too political, there's the meat and dairy industry, there's big pharma. These folks have influence as far as what is taught in medical schools. There's all the marketing out there as far as the fast food industry. We all know the big ogres that are out there. So how do we get out our swords and slay them and win our patients the health they deserve? Well, it starts with every doctor knowing this. Now, the big pharma is not going to be in your office breathing over your shoulder. If you can refer them to a plant-based dietitian and give them the handouts. In our office, we have every Tuesday evening, we go into the reception area, set up some tables. We set up hot plates and blenders. We show people how to make soups and smoothies and sauces, etc. There's a saying, do what you can where you are with what you have, and that's where it starts there. And it starts, as I said, just food demonstrations in your office, but get involved. What's being served in the hospitals to the patients there? What kind of statement is that making to the patients? That what's coming up on the trays from dietary? Is there a fast food outlet in the hospital lobby like we have at the States there? There's something right in front of you that you can work on there, and we're going to have to be chipping away at this, for years. But educating the public is really what's about. Get on TV. This should be on the 6 o'clock news. There should be letters to the editor. There should be success stories on highway billboards. So look what happened when I adopted a plant-based diet. It's doable, even though the forces are arrayed against this change are formidable. The public is ready for this. They want it. And so the physician is more than just a scalpel and a hypodermic. Sometimes it's a letter to the editor. Sometimes it's getting on the 6 o'clock news and explaining the importance of this. So do what you can where you are with what you have. But in medical school curricula, go meet with the medical school folks, because the importance of this should be woven into every year of medical education. And the basic sciences, anatomy, let's focus on the anatomy of the digestive system. Physiology, let's talk about the physiology of digestion. Biochemistry, let's talk about how proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are metabolized. And then getting out into the clinical years in pediatrics and obstetrics and surgery and internal medicine. Every one of these specialties are dealing with people with nutrition-based diseases. This should be woven into all 4 years of medical education. And so let's work for that and start with meeting with the most progressive thinkers in your medical school faculty and say we really want nutrition and effective nutrition, not just low-fat dairy here. We want and take the skin off the chicken. We want real disease-reversing nutrition taught in medical school. Ask and you shall receive, someone once said, and I think it's really true when it comes to medical education.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. And we have some of those progressive thinkers here, and they're already coming up with some questions. So, first off with... Yes, should I take the microphone? You have a microphone. Yeah, but I don't know if it's activated.
Okay. Hi, Michael, Dr. Klaper. Whatever. Very nice presentation. I have a very specific question regarding new 5GC. Could you explain a little more about that? Because I've heard a lot about that flown around, but I never fully understood what that is and how it is disease causing.
Right. This is a sialic, new 5GC. This is a sialic acid that's part of all animal muscle. And once it gets in, humans don't make it. It turns out, and chimpanzees don't make it, but every other mammal makes new 5GC. Well, once humans swallow this stuff, it gets into our tissues, and it's a pro-inflammatory molecule that really sets off the inflammatory fire burning in your tissues there, usually through prostaglandin 2 induction. And that's the point. If you're eating meat 2-3 times a day, you're giving yourselves a jolt of new 5GC 2-3 times a day, and it's in your tissues. And we're now learning how that low-grade inflammatory fire is a driving force through so many maladies in the body, from inflammatory arthritis to depression. Inflammation plays a role, and the steady ingestion of new 5GC is one of the things, just one, but a major one, that the meat-based eater is inflicting upon themselves with their daily diet. So it's a sialic acid that animals make that the animal eaters have to suffer with when the inflammatory fires start burning in their tissues.
Thank you for that. I have one question up here from a cohabitant from Canada who is actually visiting.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Klaper. Elizabeth Dean from the University of British Columbia. My question extends sort of beyond just let's get more education about nutrition in medical schools and doing lifestyle behavior change with patients, because I think our medical schools and dietitian programs should be held more accountable. They all, in their mission statements and values, it's health. We're health professionals when they're not practicing health. When they say that they're practicing best practice, they're not. When they say they're committed to evidence-based practice, and my university, the University of British Columbia, I'm part of the Faculty of Medicine, they are not. And I think this is very troublesome, that somehow they can get away using these words so lightly and not being held accountable, as well as the accreditation bodies for medical schools and dietetic and nutrition programs. I'd appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Oh boy, you certainly put your thumb right on it. Absolutely. And it's hard not to get angry, not to stand on a soapbox on the street corner in front of the School of Medicine and scream that these people are not doing it. We've been snookered here. We've been, it's the old, look over there, you know, and don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain there, and keep eating the same old stuff, and but we'll use statins to keep your cholesterol down. It's outrageous. I'm embarrassed by my profession. For scientists, we can identify a genetic mismatch on gene 821 on chromosome 14. Boy, we can home in on that directly. But the thought that cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas might be clogging up our patients' arteries, ooh, this is too abstruse a concept for our colleagues to comprehend. That's outrageous, and it's embarrassing. And there's a lot of nefarious on who's getting money for their studies that corroborate that meat and dairy are needed in the diet and all this stuff. And it's huge, as I mentioned, that there's this huge edifice that's been there for the past 50, 80 years, since World War II. The meat and dairy and pharmaceutical complex have really solidified and infiltrated into the medical system to where it's disease care. It's not a healthcare system, as you rightly point out, and it takes a few professors within the establishment to again get on TV, get on public debates, letters to the editor. This is outrageous. This cannot be allowed to stand, and embarrass these people. Call them out for what it really is. And there have been times when that's actually worked, and we can't settle for defeat on this one. And so, where to start? To start where you are. If you are on the medical faculty at UBC, without getting yourself fired, start asking at the end, during the meeting, whatever, raise your hand. I've noticed the tray coming up from dietary for our cardiac patients are full of bacon and eggs and cheeseburgers. You think we ought to change that? Start finding those acupuncture points, those points of vulnerability, and home in on them, and so they expose the outrageous fallacy of what they call healthcare these days. So a lot of work to do. Get your shovels out and your pickaxes and start hacking away with wherever you're at. But if you are on the faculty, you're in a great position. Start asking those questions and hold their feet to the fire. Just don't get yourself fired over it, but make a stand. Our patients' lives are at stake.
Thank you very much. Evidence is on our side. We have a question in the back.
Dr. Klaper, how come that you are the first doctor I met who explained the Hagen-Poiseuille law? Can you easily explain the forceful of this law? The Hagen-Poiseuille law?
The flow.
You mentioned in your lecture here the Hagen-Poiseuille law for fluid mechanics with the vessel.
You mentioned you talked about the flow, the law regarding the flow of liquid through
Poiseuille law.
The Poiseuille law.
Right, Poiseuille's law. Yes, Google it yourself. Poiseuille was
I know it, but you are the first doctor that mentioned this law. I know it.
You were the first one who mentions this. Why isn't this universally known, or why don't
Because when you increase the diameter to the double, you will 16 times increase the flow.
Indeed. And we should take advantage of that. Blood flow is life. Absolutely. And we need to bring that to everybody's attention, especially the cardiologists, but all of us. Blood flow is life, and getting those arteries open a little bit makes a huge difference in blood flow. So, yes, that should be taught in physiology without question.
All right. We have no more questions in the room, so I think that leaves us with one final task, is to give a big round of applause to you, your words.
Oh, thank you so much. What an honor to be here. I know that was a lot of material, but thank you for listening, and good luck to all of you. It's the most wonderful profession in the world that you're pursuing. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper.